Hi everybody, it's Lindsay with High Altitude Astrology, bringing you another chart reading, and today I'm going to be reading the chart of Donald Trump. If you want to follow along, he was born on June 14th, 1946 in Jamaica, New York. His birth time is 10:54 a.m. Looking at his natal chart, he is a 22-degree Gemini sun. His sun is a part of a stellium with the North Node at 20 degrees of Gemini and with Uranus at 17 degrees of Gemini. So when we think of a stellium in a chart, what it means is that those three energies work together. And depending on what energies they are, it can be either an asset or it can be more of a liability. Well, what's interesting in his chart is that that sun is conjunct the planet Uranus, which is this energy of the trickster, the energy of the maverick, the rebel, somebody who's going to do things very, very differently. And then sandwiched in between those two planet energies is the North Node at 20 degrees of Gemini. And just to clarify, the nodes have to do with past life energy. So the South Node indicates where we've come from in previous lifetimes, the lessons that we've learned, the experiences we've had. And the North Node indicates where we're going in this lifetime. To have your North Node in Gemini, this is a book called Karmic Astrology by Martin Schulman. He writes, "Here the individual receives an invitation to join society. His soul has come into this life with a past incarnation residue of wildness. As a result, he is unaccustomed to appreciating the point of view of others. The karmic continuation of a strong, self-righteous attitude makes it difficult for him to be a fair judge of his own actions. As such, his life is excessive. He is still attracted to the natural existence without formalities and will go far out of his way to avoid having any restrictions imposed on him." There's more, but you get the idea. He's come from a lifetime where anything goes. You know, he had more freedom. That's what Sagittarius is all about. So now he's in this lifetime learning how to work with others. And so that stellium in general is symbolic of this part of him that is this kind of wild, untamed energy that you see about him. He's really somebody who has a hard time fitting into social norms. But that North Node in Gemini is suggesting that, you know, part of his experience in this lifetime is to learn how to function more within the group. And the group is really a Uranian concept. Uranus does have to do with recognizing that even though everyone is an individual, all of us as individuals make up the whole and make up the group, and that we need to consider the whole and the group, in our expression. Continuing to look at the natal, he's got his sun at 22 degrees of Gemini trining Jupiter at 17 degrees of Libra. So Jupiter expands things. Jupiter is the largest planet in the solar system. It represents things like optimism and philosophical perspectives and luck, things kind of going our way. So this is what makes him kind of seem like he's lucky in some ways. It's like, how did this guy even get into this position? And then with all of this stuff that has gone on since he's taken office, none of it is like sticking, you know what I mean? It's all kind of, it's like he's like Teflon. And this is part of that Sun-Jupiter energy. He just kind of always is like a cat that lands on its feet. And of course, Jupiter in Libra, which is where his is located, that is somebody who wants to expand not only his perspective but the perspective of others through balance and harmony, through fairness. So he's kind of an anomaly because he's got all this Uranus and North Node in Gemini conjunct that Sun stellium energy, but it's trining this Jupiter that really would suggest he does want to create fairness and harmony through his own perspective and through sharing his perspective with other people. But what's also interesting is that he has his natal Venus conjunct Saturn squaring that Jupiter. So his Venus is at 25 degrees of Cancer, his Saturn's at 23 degrees of Cancer, and this squares the Jupiter at 17 degrees of Libra. And I think this is where his more stern perspective comes in. It may even relate to experiences in his childhood related to his father, because Saturn does deal with the authority figures in our life. And when we have Venus conjunct Saturn, it can mean we may have had experiences in life where we didn't feel supported, or we didn't feel the love, or our own expression of love was somehow told to us that, wasn't right, or we shouldn't express it. And there's an astrologer that writes about this. His name is Hiroki Nizato, and he writes about having Saturn-Venus conjunction in the chart, that the classic thought was that relationships will somehow be frustrating. The question to ask is, why is this so? And how can we work through this pattern and improve the qualities of our relationships? He quotes Noel Tyler saying Saturn-Venus tension, which he calls suppression of love feelings, suggests a tightness in handling emotional matters. If you have this aspect in your natal chart, you may find it challenging to share your emotions and affections with others. What causes this pattern? It is suggested that delay or an interruption of emotional maturation process is the issue. Perhaps your parents' relationship was extremely strained, leaving no room for you, the child, or too much responsibility was thrust upon you while you were still young, and you didn't have enough experience of having your emotional needs met by somebody. So again, there's sort of this contradiction in him where you would think with Jupiter and Libra, you'd want to try and create harmony and balance, but with that Venus-Saturn, there's something restraining and holding back the loving energy. And this may stem from some of the way you see him behave, because he's very duplicitous, and of course that's a Gemini Sun energy as well. But he seems to care, and then he kind of doesn't seem to care. He also is what's called a full moon birth, and this is because when he was born, the sun was at 22 degrees of Gemini, like I've said, and then the moon was at 21 degrees of Sagittarius. And also the south node is conjunct that moon in Sagittarius as well at 20 degrees. So people with a full moon birth are interesting because what it means is that the solar energy and the lunar energy are in opposite positions. And when we have oppositions in the chart, we can tend to flip sort of back and forth between the two energies as they're both vying for expression. So at some point we might act more solar and shining out through our creative expression, in this case through his communication, and could even be, related to the stellium energy, that part of him that actually does have the desire to kind of make progress and to work with the group, in mind. But then this other part of him, this moon in Sag, and connected to the south node where he's come from, could be this attachment to his habits and to his emotions around, this sometimes very bombastic grandiosity, sort of like he knows everything, and you know, he doesn't need anybody else's input, and he's got it all figured out. It's even sometimes that part of him that's just like he just puts his foot in it sometimes. And, you know, it's like foot in mouth syndrome, you know, he can't hold himself back. So there's this interesting dynamic between the sun and the moon also in his natal chart. A few more things. He's got Mars and Leo conjunct the ascendant. His ascendant is 29 degrees of Leo. And again, 29 degrees is an anorectic degree in any sign, which means we really feel that energy strongly in the chart. So he's a very much Leo rising individual. I mean, this is what his hair is all about. I mean, because the ascendant relates to what we look like, for one thing. But it's his, you know, it's his desire to be noticed and to be seen and to appear regal and dignified. But that Sun-Uranus part of him just cannot, you know, hold it back. He is just a weird person. He's different. He's unique. He's a rebel. There's no hiding that part of him. As much as that Leo rising wants to be seen as the dignitary and taken extremely seriously. So let's look at a few of his transits and progressions that are happening right now, because a lot of people ask, because I study astrology, like, when is the other shoe going to drop for him? You know, people that don't want to see him in power. And I have been looking at his chart, and there's definitely some aspects coming up that may symbolize something's going to shift and change. But first, I want to talk about why it seems like he's doing really well. You know, he's got these meetings coming up with these different leaders in foreign countries that have been, you know, outcast, and we haven't really tried to work with diplomatically in a long while. And today, exactly, actually, he's having Venus conjuncting his Mars. Transiting Venus is conjuncting his Mars. And of course, again, that Mars is right on that ascendant. And I didn't mention what Mars on the ascendant relates to, but it definitely means he's got some warrior energy with him, in him. He's a fighter. You know, Mars rules Aries. He has courage. He has heart. He wants to, his approach is to kind of like just go for things, just do it his way in some ways. And you know, that's that part of him that just kind of is able to blast through things. That's Mars on the ascendant. From the Astrologer's Handbook by Francis Sequoian and Louis Acker, they write about having Mars on the ascendant. This aspect confers aggressive and forceful personalities. The native unfailingly makes themselves noticed and markedly affect their environment. Their desire to be leaders is combined with a competitive spirit. So you can see that that's definitely a part of his approach. You know, he's just sort of this strong energy. Okay, so going back to having Venus on the Mars today. And that's basically just going to stimulate that Mars energy, but it's going to stimulate it with the energy of Venus, which is beauty and creativity and pleasantry. And, you know, so this is the energy right now that's moving across that Mars conjunct his ascendant, and it's creating, you know, this appearance or this energy of him sort of being in a more dignified state right now. But a few other things are going on too. He has had transiting Mars stationed retrograde opposite his Pluto. And of course, you may know that Mars stationed retrograde at 9 degrees of Aquarius on June 26th, 2018, and it will, in his chart, complete the clearing of the opposition to his Pluto. His Pluto's at 10 degrees of Leo in the 12th house. That the Mars is going to clear the opposition to the Pluto after August 18th. And Mars stationary retrograde opposite Pluto. To me, this is speaking to some of the decisions he's been making, especially around trade wars. You know, he's applying these tariffs to other countries. That's making it more expensive for them to import into the United States, and then other countries have turned around and put tariffs on our exports from the US. So there's this warrior Mars opposite Pluto, death and destruction, transformation energy going on in his chart right now. Seems to be playing out in some of those decisions that he's making. There is an opportunity, especially with the Mars retrograde, that gives us a chance to really look at how we're using our Mars energy and reevaluate the way that we want to use it. And if he's at all inclined to try and expand his consciousness, maybe he'll be able to at this time go through some sort of transformation. That's what Pluto's all about, around how he asserts himself. And I wanted to read something from the Astrology King about transiting Mars opposite Pluto. He writes, "It gives an intense passion to achieve your strongest desires. In this competitive spirit, you may go to great lengths to achieve victory. This battle may be an internal one in which you strive to reach your full potential and better past efforts. This transit does come with powerful and primal energies, often activating the fight or flight response. If you're able to channel such aggressive and dominating urges, the transformation nature of this transit enables marked achievements. Physical and creative pursuits are favored, but the competitive arena may involve business or other professional areas where courage and strength are required. Here's the other part. He says, it says, more often, however, this transit will result in competition against others or a particular person. If in the above case where you concentrate fully on achieving your own goals, you can come up against resistance from powerful enemies. If you threaten their position or use ruthless tactics, you will be in for a fight." And this brings up the whole immigration thing too that he's been struggling with, because he changed the immigration policy, and then all of a sudden kids were getting separated from their parents, and the whole country and the world really were in an outrage about it, and he experienced resistance about this. The other thing that's been going on in his chart is that transiting Saturn has been opposing Mercury in his chart. And this started when Saturn went stationary retrograde opposite his Mercury, which is a star of destiny, by the way, because he's a Gemini, which just means that this has more significance. That Saturn stationary retrograde went opposite his Mercury in April of 2018, and it completes in December of 2018. And again, I think this is speaking to some of his harsher thought process right now, because Saturn is that disciplinarian, that contraction energy, that, kind of limiting perspective. It can be helpful in having to make decisions, critical decisions, because it's somewhat emotionless. But with the opposition from Mercury to Mercury, it brings in the energy of relationships and the other. And this is to me why he's getting a lot of pushback to his ideas, because they come across as being extremely cold and extremely, uncaring and extremely harsh. So it'll be interesting to see how this continues to play out through basically the end of the year for him. So this is the transit that I think is going to bring up more challenges for him moving forward. In April of 2019 through February of 2020, he's going to have transiting Pluto oppose his natal Saturn. And his natal Saturn sits in his 11th house. Again, it's conjunct that Venus. It also rules his 5th house. Capricorn is hidden there in his 5th house. And what I see happening at this time with transiting Pluto opposite his Saturn is that really the glass house may come shattering down. The card house may come shattering down, because Pluto, again, is death and transformation. It's very intense and powerful energy. And it's in the sign of Capricorn, opposing his Saturn in Cancer. Pluto in Capricorn wants to transform governmental structures, authority structures, opposing his Saturn in Cancer. Saturn is how he personally puts his energy into creating the structure and foundation in his life. It has to do with his work. So to have Pluto, death and transformation, opposing that energy of your work, I feel it's just really going to be a sensitive time where it could finally be the time, where the chickens come home to roost. A lot of what he's done, may catch up with him. Saturn is the planet of karma. And I wanted to read something about this. Astro.com writes about Pluto-Saturn transits. And they say one of the most challenging aspects is the opposition to natal Saturn from transiting Pluto. Such transits create very intense conflicts with authority figures, especially including parents if the opposition is from Capricorn to Saturn in Cancer, which is exactly what this is. Corporations, bosses, governments, banks, police, etc. So those are all the people that these intense conflicts can come from. You can see that there's potential there for it to be the time when a lot of crap comes down for him. And, we shall see. We shall see. So this has been my interpretation of Donald Trump's chart. If you like my channel, please subscribe. You can also find me online at highaltitudeastrology.com, at my website or my Facebook page. On my website, you can sign up to receive a 10% discount on astrology services. And also, when you sign up, that will also allow you to receive daily emails that I send out that I discuss the energies of the day. Thanks again so much, and see you next time. Adios. Bye-bye.